What's happening, guys? Jam-Pack Sam here, and today we are diving into the Crew Motorfest closed beta. Now, before we get started, I do want to thank Ubisoft for providing the access to the game. I'm a part of the Ubisoft Creators Program, so I did get an invite, got to dive in a little bit early, and I've spent probably about 5 hours with the game so far. I dove in on Saturday morning, started driving around, and worked my way through some playlists, some customization, just to get a holistic view of the game, and I've got to say, I'm pretty impressed so far. I want to start off by laying some personal groundwork here. I'm not the guy with a simulator rig in his garage. I'm not the one that's tweaking and tuning every single little thing about my car that I'm using in the game. I just like to dive in, tweak what's necessary, play around with different parts and bits, and then get into the races themselves. So if you're a hardcore racing fan, this opinion might not be the one for you. You might want to go with a more hardcore racing channel. Just wanted to throw that out there. Now that that's out of the way, let's dive into the game itself. And as you're checking out this gameplay, you might think, wow, this looks a lot like Forza Horizon. And my friend, let me tell you, you're not wrong. Because I was playing with my girlfriend sitting on the couch next to me, and she said, "Oh, you're back into Forza Horizon?" And I said, "No, this is the Crew Motorfest." So that kind of paints the picture. But there are some differentiating factors here that we'll dive into more in a couple of moments. However, right out of the gate, the game feels pretty good. I will say that I think after playing Forza Horizon for so long, this game feels a little bit looser. It feels like the controls might be a little bit more arcadey than what we get with Forza Horizon 5, where it is more of a simulator, but still bringing in those arcade racing elements. So keep that in mind going in, but I will say after about 10 or 15 minutes of going through some races, I was able to adapt pretty quickly and started really clicking with the way the game feels. Right off the bat, you're presented with this big video showcasing a lot of what you're going to be able to do in the Crew Motorfest, and that itself feels a lot like Forza Horizon 5. But I picked my 3 favorite playlists that I've gone through so far. There is the Porsche 911 playlist, the Made in Japan playlist, which I love, and the Welcome to Hawaii playlist, I believe is what it's called, but that's kind of your introduction into the game. And so each of these not only has a variety of gameplay experiences, the kinds of vehicles you're going to be using change as well, but they have an entirely different vibe. Like the Made in Japan is very Tokyo themed, it's very neon, it's very 80s aesthetic, if you will. While if you look at something like the Porsche 911 playlist, that takes a more historical approach, a more traditional racing approach, while the Hawaii playlist kind of feels more like Forza Horizon 5, where you have these high-octane jumps, these fast-paced races through these jungles. Each of them brings a unique feel that almost makes this feel like a different racing game every time you dive into a different playlist, and I was shockingly impressed by how good that all felt. Each playlist takes about 45 minutes or an hour to wrap up, but once you have completed all of the main parts of a playlist, you then unlock challenges throughout the world. So as you're just doing free roam, riding from road to road, you can really dive in and find new ways to experience a specific playlist and unlock different parts and cosmetics that really enhance the experience overall. And when I say challenges, I took notes on a couple of different ones that stood out to me. We've got speed traps, which are a standard part of any big open world racing game. We also have the drive-through targets challenge. I'm not sure what it's called, but basically you're riding down a road and you'll earn points if you go through these big loops. And if you hit the turns properly, there's smaller circles within the big targets that can give you extra points. And then you also have open world treasures as well. So as you're riding down a road, all of a sudden your GPS will start beeping and the beeps get louder and louder depending on where you're going, and then eventually you'll stumble upon this box that typically has some credits and some parts. So clearly there's a lot of different experiences in the game, but it's not all just cars. That's the biggest differentiating factor with the Crew Motorfest in comparison to other big open world racing games. You've got bikes, you've got planes, and you've got speedboats. I'll say that I've spent about 85% of my time in the game with a car, and it seems like that's kind of where they're leaning. You are going to be doing the majority of this game in a vehicle with 4 wheels, but there are events that force you to use a speedboat, a plane, things like that. And on top of that, when you're in free roam, you can change to any vehicle you want instantaneously. They kind of took a page out of the Riders Republic playbook, where if you are riding down a road in a Mustang going 110, you can all of a sudden change into a plane and take off. Or if you're flying miles above the ground, you can turn into a car and fall all the way down and just keep on running. It's a very cool gameplay mechanic. The last big positive that I want to call out is that it feels like this game has a ton of personality, and in some ways even more personality than something like Forza Horizon 5, because the playlists each have a different feel with a unique look to them, but you've also got some in-game commentary from friends on the radio. Your in-game AI also has a lot of fun little one-liners that are said throughout the experience, so I think that it's not just a bare-bones racing game. It's not just something that throws this racing game and just lets you go wild with it. There is some fun mixed in there as well, which every game should absolutely have. Now let's move into some of those negative parts of the experience. Speaking about those one-liners, I think I was told to not rest on my laurels 3 times in 5 minutes, so they can get a little bit repetitive. I don't know if there are going to be more lines added to the game whenever it fully launches, but that is one thing that I wanted to call out. On top of that, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the controls feel slightly more floaty in comparison to Forza Horizon 5, and some of the jumps don't really feel like they have the same weight that they do in other big open-world racing games. For instance, if I'm in a Ford Bronco and I launch myself off a cliff, it doesn't really have that same impactful thud that it's got in a game like Forza Horizon. Now, neither of these are really game breakers, and neither of them should shy you away from picking up the game on day one if you do want to dive into a new open-world racer, but it is just something to keep in mind. Then we get to some slight frame rate dips, and this is something that I noticed when we're going through dense jungles or very fast-paced city scenes. It's not something that lasts for a long time, a fraction of a second, but you can tell that it dips from 60, since I'm running it in performance mode, down to probably somewhere in like the 40s, and then immediately right back up. And that is something that could be remedied once the official game actually launches. Keep in mind this is a closed beta, so there are more updates that are on the way, but it is still something that I've got to call out. And then we get to the monetization. Now, this isn't necessarily a negative or a positive right now. This is just something that exists in the beta, and I've got to give them kudos because a lot of closed betas don't even show you what the in-game monetization is going to be like. Those microtransactions can sometimes be hidden behind a wall, and previewers don't even get a look at them, but they show them off pretty well in the Crew. Now, we don't know how much these things are going to cost in real-world money, but the way that it works, from what I'm seeing, is that there are 2 different kinds of currency in the game, the in-game earnable currency and then Crew credits. I don't have a problem with this as it stands right now, because that way they can still monetize the game, support it in the long term, and the people that do want to pay and have the means to pay can totally get whatever they want, while the people that don't want to pay but just want to play the game can also unlock everything. No problem there. My question is, over time, will it become nearly impossible to unlock some of these cars without paying, or will some be locked behind a paywall entirely? Right now, again, no signs of that happening. I want to make that very clear. But this kind of in-game monetization does make me just a little bit worried. Nothing to be concerned about right now, but there is potential in the future. Just want to make that clear. To wrap up my thoughts here, I am shocked by how good the Crew Motorfest really is. When this game was first revealed, I had every expectation that this was just going to be Ubisoft chasing a trend and not really trying to differentiate itself in any kind of way, just really trying to capitalize on those racing fans that love a game like Forza Horizon. And after spending about 5 hours with the game, I gotta say, there's enough here to make this game stand out. And I would say it's going to be kind of a Burnout versus Need for Speed situation here, where there are fans of both of these franchises individually. There's also going to be some crossover here, but there's enough that make both of the games stand out that warrant them existing, and I think that's really nice. Plus, Forza Horizon 5 could use some competition. Let's push them in a way that they might not have been pushed before, even by the likes of something like Gran Turismo. So I would love to know your thoughts down below after checking out this gameplay or potentially even diving into the closed beta for yourself. Can this game really compete with the likes of all of these big racing games that are hitting the market today, or do you think that it's got its work cut out for it? But if you are convinced and you do want to dive in on day one, the game launches on September the 14th for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC, and I personally think it's shaping up to be a pretty good time. Once again, thank you so much to Ubisoft for giving me the chance to dive into the closed beta, and I will catch you guys on the next one.